Revenge films.
Before I divorced my husband, I was always getting verbally abused by him. He would call me stupid high school dropout, trash that has nothing but looks as a redeeming quality, that he'll throw me out when I get old, that I can't survive without him. He would punch me, kick me, and abuse me financially as well. The reason was because I was a high school dropout. He even called me a slave. But I didn't want my daughter to see any of this, so I did my best to stay positive in front of her. I tried to divorce him and filled out divorce papers multiple times, but every time he would rip apart the papers on the spot. However, the reality was that even if I tried to get a job, every single job posting required a minimum of a high school diploma, so I was left with very few options. I knew better than anyone that I was a high school dropout. Of course, that was really frustrating, but I didn't think that made it okay for my husband to abuse me like that. When I was in high school, my mother was deceived by my relative and became a guarantor of a very high loan. In order to pay back the debt, she had to give up everything, including my school fees. And because we were unable to pay my tuition, I had to drop out. That's why my last education is left at middle school. But I don't blame my mother at all, and there's no reason my husband should be allowed to hate me for that either. I had enough, and I decided to get my best revenge possible on my husband. My husband had tried to take the exam one more time for difficult national certifications in the past, and he failed. I decided to take a shot, and I vowed to pass. Of course, it wasn't going to be an easy road. I had a young daughter in preschool, and working a part-time job that accepted my high school dropout status. I had to balance all of it, but use the middle of the night while my husband was sleeping to study. For someone who didn't go to high school without a miracle, it would probably be impossible to study successfully. But in this day and age, there are multiple teachers that can help through the screen, so I did my best to put all of it into my studies. The first year, as expected, I was crushed with overwhelming defeat. I had no idea what was what, and I was faced with the reality of my lack of knowledge. But I refused to give up. If I could just pass this exam, it would open up my future and give me more advantages to find a job. And more than anything, I would be able to give a fatal blow to my husband that had abused me for all these years. I had my hands full, though, with the added strain of studying, so there were days that I wasn't able to get around to all of the chores all the time.
What the hell are you doing, slacking around the house?
Auntie kicked me in the head, so I went to the hospital and made sure to leave a record of it. That only became more motivation for me, so once my daughter and my husband went to sleep at night, I studied like crazy. I only left the bare minimum of study materials like my books and my notebooks at home, and everything else I left at the rental locker. Whenever I have time, I would also stop by the library to study. The second year, I failed once again, but in the third year, a miracle came upon me. No way, I passed! I can't believe it, I passed! I had no one to celebrate with or to compliment me, and
What makes you think that a stupid high school dropout like you has any right to an opinion against me? You should just shut your mouth and listen to what I tell you to do!
I had tears streaming down my face as I saw the results. A few days later, my husband came to me as usual, and he became physically violent, so I hit back with a certificate. "Who's the stupid one now?" I said as I showed him the certificate that I passed the exam. You've always belittled me and said that I was brainless, but from what I recall, you have failed at passing the exam. So, do you still think you have the right to belittle me? At the very least, you can't anymore because I did what you couldn't and I passed the legal exam that you failed.
Shut up!
As soon as I said that, my husband snapped and went insane. He lunged towards me and started punching and kicking with all his strength.
There's obviously no way that an idiot like you would ever pass! You're lying! Who do you think you are? You stupid, brainless high school dropout!
I desperately tried to protect myself as I curled up in a ball and took his punches and kicks, when suddenly our next-door neighbor started banging on the door aggressively.
Are you okay? I can hear some loud noises and someone yelling, but are you okay?
He yelled inside. Our apartment was actually the corner door, and the unit next door was always empty, but a few days ago, a new resident had just moved in. The new neighbor continued.
The police will be here soon! Please open up the door!
My husband was furious.
Damn it! Sticking your nose where it doesn't belong!
But then, when he heard the sirens, I was taken in an ambulance to the hospital, and I had fractures all over my body. My husband was arrested on the spot and taken in by the police. My entire body was in excruciating physical pain because of my husband, but mentally and emotionally, I felt completely different. First, I was able to somehow pass the legal exam, and that crap husband never was able to. And I succeeded in showing him my intelligence. On top of that, by passing the exam, I also gained the confidence that even if I divorced my husband, I would be able to make a living and support myself and my daughter. This changed everything. After I finished my treatment and went back home, I went straight to the neighbor's house to thank him, and then I went to the city office to file for a divorce before packing up me and my daughter's belongings. There's no point in being here anymore. I've done everything that I needed to. With my daughter by my side, we left the house together. After that, I went to the police and told him how I tried to get a divorce many times, but my husband had refused. At that time, I also explained how I had no money of my own right now. The police officer then introduced me to various services such as legal housing provided by the city for me to get back on my feet. With a place to go, I was finally able to divorce my husband, and I turned in all of the photos and medical exam reports that I had gathered to serve as evidence of his abuse. Thanks to that, I was able to collect a settlement fee from my husband as well. However, even though I may have a certification, I wasn't sure if I would be able to have a steady life in the beginning. Our living expenses were only going to continue increasing as my daughter got older. I did receive the settlement from my husband, but I was nervous about the future. When I discussed all of this with the city services, they introduced me to a shared housing program for single mothers. There, I met other women who had also been abused by their husbands, or others who were struggling to make ends meet alone. Our room was small, but the kitchen and other spaces were shared, and everybody took responsibility for themselves, and seemed to enjoy living there together. It was my first time living with others, and especially with strangers I've never met, so I was a little bit uneasy at first.
Welcome! Nice to meet you!
All of the other mothers in the house were extremely warm and welcoming, and there were kids that were around the same age as my daughter, and she was able to make friends with all of them. Even though everybody had a different situation, every person had gone through a lot of pain and difficulty and ended up here. And they were shocked that I spent 3 years studying for the legal exam in order to get revenge on my husband.
What exactly was the certification for?
To become a leader notary. That's amazing! You worked hard just so that you could do what your husband couldn't? And you studied alone? I watched many videos and took as many online classes as I could, and I saved up little by little to buy the textbooks too. I had never properly studied before, so it was a lot harder than I expected.
It was all worth it. Between the housework and raising your child and your part-time job. And you were studying while your husband was asleep, right? That's incredible!
I wasn't doing any of this because I wanted the compliments, but after 3 years of studying alone and also being alone when I got the results, I was so happy to finally be complimented by someone for the first time that I felt tears streaming down my face. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, we're going to celebrate you today.
Let's do it. You and I could cook together. What? You're going to make Kelly cook even though we're celebrating her?
Because Kelly's daughter was saying that her mom's cooking was the best, right, Catherine?
Yeah, Mom's cooking is so good.
I would love to try it. Kelly, would you mind? Sure. Just like that, I made friends in the shared housing with a group of women who had overcome their own difficulties. I lived there for about 6 months until I finally had a steady enough income to move out the shared housing. But I still keep in touch with all of my friends there. Apparently, they were inspired by me, and now they're all studying to get their own certifications. As for my husband, after being arrested by the police and divorced by me, they discovered the years of abuse that he had been committing towards me, and he was fired from his job. I heard this years later when I ran into my old neighbor from my old neighborhood. My husband had been working in sales and met with a lot of people through his job. However, after being arrested and charged for domestic violence and abuse, I can understand why the company saw him as a liability. After being fired from his company and the town finding out his true nature, my husband had nowhere to go and gave up on finding a job either. I heard that people only see him these days in ratty sweatpants, going out and buying alcohol, and otherwise staying holed up inside his home. Since he's not working, of course he has no salary, and apparently his apartment is piled up with trash inside out, and he's living amongst the garbage, to the point where he's gotten multiple warnings from the city as well, but nobody bothered to check on him. So, I heard that's the life that he's living alone. I have no sympathy for him whatsoever. As for me, I'm working hard every day under my senior colleagues as I learn from them and hope to continue growing in my new company. We have a stable life now, and I even have time to spend with my daughter, and my life is fulfilling. I have no intention of having any relation to that man ever again. But after years of abuse, the 3 years of studying so hard, I wish I could scream at the top of my lungs and tell him how great my life is now.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.